Hey everybody, it's Mark Masters. We got a new episode of Always Bookin Comedy. Waiting on the other comic to join. Let's send him a quick text message. Remind him that this is happening. Hopefully I have his I do have his number. All right, quick text sent. Went to Montana this weekend. We'll just kill some time. I'll tell you that little story. Went to Montana this weekend, and it was a lot of fun. I drove about 1,500 miles. I left Denver Friday morning, pretty early. Not that early actually, like 7:30 a.m. It was surprisingly light out. I don't get up that early that often, and was surprised that the sun was already out. Pretty much missed the sunrise. Took off for Bozeman, Montana. Nice long drive. Did I do anything interesting between Denver and Bozeman? I stopped in Billings and spent about 45 minutes at the old Planet Fitness. Got a workout in. That was nice. Hopped over to the Walmart in Billings and bought some supplies. And then continued on to Bozeman, did 2 shows with Bo Johnson, both basically sold out. A lot of people at the shows, really fun, totally worth it. Great club, Last Best Comedy in downtown Bozeman, Montana. Really enjoyed it. Had a great time. Got to hang out with Bo after the show and after the second show. Sold a lot of merch too. Thank you, Bozeman. You really came through. It matters when that show. I'm a feature, so the pay is it's fair. It is industry standard, but it's yeah. I need those merch sales. Okay, we got a text message. Let's see. Says says yes, but I forget what I asked. Oh yeah, he said I asked if he's getting on. He says yes, I'm getting on. So delayed start here, everybody, with the interview portion. I went from Bozeman to Glasgow, Montana. That was a pretty boring drive, I'd say, and the show was great. Did 65 minutes there. All right, we got our guest. We still got lots of time here. Here we go. Hey, it's Ben Dailey from Denver, Colorado. How are you, Ben?
Good. Sorry about the delay there. I was having some technical issues.
It's okay. It's okay. Looks like there's some technical issues with that window curtain directly behind you as well. So we'll deal with those later, though. Let's not worry about that right now. Are you a Hokie?
My family is a hoagie. I am currently in my younger sister's childhood room and just wearing a bunch of clothes that are around.
Okay.
So
Are you home for the? Is it Christmas time? Is that what's going on?
it is, yeah, early
Okay, right
Christmas.
on. That's a nice long break. Are you doing shows? I assume that's Virginia area.
Yeah, I just went to a festival close to my parents and doubled down for early Christmas as well.
Awesome. What? Tell us about the festival. Where were you?
Was in Bristol, Virginia, or Tennessee at the Blue Ridge Comedy Festival.
Okay.
I don't know if you're familiar with the
How,
club there, newer club.
Yeah, I'm on their email list somehow, and I just deleted some emails about the festival, like tickets going quick or something like that.
Yeah.
So I'm aware it was happening, but only very vaguely. Tell us about the. You've been to a lot of festivals. I know you're a big festival guy, very popular in the festival scene. What makes a good festival to you? What's a bad festival? Maybe without naming any names, like what makes them bad, and tell us how where Blue Ridge fell in the scheme of
Yeah.
things.
I think yeah, I've been fortunate to do a decent amount. You should see the rejection list though. Very long. A
Well
lot of
played. Well
a
played.
lot of rejections as well. But I don't
It's
know.
a
There's a lot
numbers
of
game.
things. Yeah, yeah, it really is. For me though, I think a good festival, there's a combination of things. I think having activities and bringing the comics together, whether that's activities or a common space or something to get all the comics together, because obviously networking is a huge part of it. And I've been to some where um, you're kind of disconnected from a lot of the comics and don't get to meet a lot of them. So
Right.
that's one. The quality of shows obviously is good. A lot of them that I've done, you're doing maybe one good show and then maybe a couple open mic shows.
Right.
So quality shows, and then also the amount of shows. If you're flying out and traveling to a place, it's nice to get at least 2 or 3 spots. And then everything else, I mean, there's stuff that other places do that go above and beyond. It's kind of the cherry on top. But that's kind of the minimum for me that makes it like a worthwhile, I'd say, to spend a
Okay.
bunch of
So
money to go
social
out.
aspect and quality of the shows. How is Blue Ridge?
It was good. It was great. First time there. The club's fun. It's like a tight knit. It's a smaller area, but people come out to laugh. They did like a competition style. So
Okay.
they had a competition that went throughout the week and then ended yesterday for the finals. And then they also did two shows outside of that. So
Okay.
it was a good mixture of like a main thing and then also some kind of side shows, I guess you could say.
Right. And that one had the added benefit of being a good travel thing. Like the time of year plus the location was pretty helpful for you.
Yeah, it worked out being close enough to my parents. So it's like, you know what, I'll go do that and then ride out to see my parents for a little bit and then kind of get two into one.
Any other Denver comics there?
Yeah, no Denver, but Dan Bublitz and Lou So were the two Colorado
Okay. I don't
comics
know
that were
Lou.
also there.
Where's he?
She is
Oh,
Colorado Springs.
oh, okay. Okay. Nice. Cool.
Yeah.
We got a question online from North Carolina. Thoughts on paying for either festivals or stage time? So I think you can read between the lines there and take that. But
Yeah, I think that's a great question and something I've thought a lot about this year. I've been fortunate to get on a decent amount of festivals this year for the first time. I've not too many before this year, and I think moving forward, I'm going to pick and choose very carefully the festivals that I go to. And I say that meaning I think it's benefit if you have the money, it's very beneficial to go out and meet people. At, if you're going out to these festivals and you're not being social and networking and meeting people, then the answer would be I wouldn't do it at
right.
all. But you go out there, you meet people, you have a good time, you make connections, maybe get a good tape. You meet club owners sometimes if it's through a club, which is beneficial for you to have a connection there moving forward. But I think everybody has to make the decision at some point, like, is this worth my money moving forward now that I have connections throughout the country and this and that? Should I spend $1,000 to go do two or three mediocre shows?
Right. Do you have an example of a festival connection that turned into paid work?
Let's see. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. I feel like there's got to be.
Or even a
I mean,
venue maybe you met?
I don't know that I've gone back yet since a lot of the festivals
Okay.
I've done were this year. So
Okay.
I'm looking at moving forward into next
Right.
year and the
You have
years
the hope.
beyond.
The hope.
Yeah,
What's a
exactly.
hot lead?
Hopefully.
What's something you're excited or somebody you're excited to work with in the future maybe that you met at a festival?
Yeah, so I'm excited for some of these smaller clubs, like I did Last Best Comedy
I was
in
just there.
Montana.
When you were getting on, I was just there on Friday night. Did two
Oh,
shows.
no way.
It was
How was
great.
it?
It was really fun. I got to feature for Bo
Such a fun club.
Johnson. It's a really cool club. Yeah, it was great. And everybody there was so nice and it was super well run. I was really impressed. Like we'll get into this in a little bit, but I feel like I don't think I've done any of your shows, but I've watched one of your shows and I just get this impression from you in general hanging out with you. You're pretty organized. And I appreciate that in showrunners, maybe more than the average comedian. And Last Best was a club that was super well run. Like just everything about it was precise.
Yeah, no, I love that. That was a very cool place. And that's kind of the smaller size club that I think for myself and a lot of people looking into headlining and getting into headlining, one of those clubs that is obviously much easier to maybe get into versus your chains like Funny Bones and things like that, where you
Yeah.
really it's a totally different system versus like, hey, I met these people, I performed here, maybe I can set up a door deal in the future.
Yeah.
So that's
When you went
definitely
out, were you the headliner or part of the headlining group, or were you supporting
so
somebody?
I
Or
I did the festival there.
oh, okay, okay,
Yeah, so it was just like any festival. I guess they had a headliner or two on the festival, but I was not a headliner. But the hope is, yeah, to go do these festivals, meet the
right.
people there, make connections, and then hopefully be able to reach out in the future and say, hey, I'm coming through town. Can we set up a date to headline.
Yeah, that's all. That's a good example. Last Best, great club. And not like, I mean, it's kind of far from Denver, but it's not like flying to New Jersey or Virginia or something like that.
Right.
You can
Yeah,
drive there in a day. It was not the easiest drive, but I
it's a
got pretty
long day,
lucky.
but you
I
can
mean, it
do
was
it.
the middle of December and it was like 50 degrees in Bozeman. No snow. I mean, I got really lucky with the
Yeah,
drive.
I think I saw videos on Facebook of maybe like 2 weeks ago where they had like 10 feet of snow in a truck driving through whatever the highway is there in Montana.
Jeez, that's crazy. And then I went from there all the way up north towards Canada, and I did that a year ago, and it was like freezing and snow and awful. And this year it was warm. It was like a heat wave. All right,
Yeah,
let's
that's
move off
funny.
festival. We did have a let's see, yeah, just a comment from North Carolina here about knowing when to pay off it. Like I feel the same way Ben does. Like my rule now is I basically aim to do one festival a year. It used to be I'd like shotgun approach, and I want to do like a quality festival. I want to do a festival that, like Ben said, you're doing good social networking. It's leading to paid work. It's leading, and paid work is fungible, right? Like maybe you get $100 to do a show, but it costs you $300 to get there, kind of thing. It's not necessarily a positive in your bank account, but it's a positive in your career, hopefully, because you're meeting other comics and finding a new venue. So let's rewind. How long have you been doing comedy? How did you get into comedy?
Yeah, I've been doing comedy 5 years. Will be 5 years in like a week exactly. Got into comedy. I think like a lot of comedians, I'd always wanted to do it. I mean, I was always kind of the black sheep, like wanting to get attention, stuff like that. But I grew up in a small area that didn't really have any comedy. I had no understanding of like a path to becoming a comedian. So it wasn't until I moved to Denver 5 years ago that I really saw the opportunity to easily go to open mics all over town all the time. Um, and so I jumped in, yeah, late 2018 and really haven't skipped many days since.
That's awesome, man. Well, Ben, if you don't know him, he's one of the harder working comedians in the industry, and very impressed. Like less than 5 years, and running shows all over the country, touring. Like how I don't know. Can you talk to that a little bit? Like you are putting together a tour. Like Ben, just a little inside baseball. Like sometimes when I'm going on the road, I will reach out to Ben as a mentor of sorts. Like, hey, I'm going to Nebraska. Do you know any venues I can hit up? Very generous, very friendly, always with the information. And knows, I feel like I know a lot about touring in comedy, and Ben seems to know more than I do. How is that possible, given you're not even at your 5 year mark yet?
Yeah, I mean, I think like with anything with comedy, you learn by doing. And I started setting up shows on the road fairly early, due simply to the fact that I wanted to do shows, I wasn't booked on a lot of shows in Denver. Also, as you're coming out of the pandemic, there weren't as many shows in general,
Did you run
but
any shows pre-pandemic, or was it all post?
all post.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
Yeah,
I
you saw
mean,
an opening. You were like, "Hey,
yeah,
nothing going on. Here we go.
yeah.
Let's go."
Well, I waited till maybe like mid 2021 when we were kind of
Sure.
like starting to come out of things. But genuinely, it's funny to look back on it because I guess a little over 2 years ago, I had no idea about anything. And I remember booking a small theater in Holyoke, Colorado, town of
Never even
2,500
heard of
people.
it. Okay.
I rented a theater there for $65. That's how small of a town it is. And I booked a couple local comedians. I said I'll drive up there. It's like 3 hours away. And I remember planning for it and doing all the marketing, just doing everything I
Hold on. Can
could.
I pause you? How do you
Mhm.
find Holyoke? Are you just like looking at an atlas and like start dialing for small towns with theaters? Like, how does that happen?
Essentially, yes. Google mapping and looking for venues, theaters, places to rent out. Um, and that was, I don't know how I specifically found Holyoke,
Which
but
direction is it from Denver?
northeast. So it's like
Okay.
up towards like if you're going into
Near
Nebraska.
Nebraska. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Probably
yeah.
close to Akron, Colorado, which I'd never heard of, but was recently in.
Oh yeah, good
Yeah.
show there.
Yeah, we could talk about it later. But okay,
Yeah, but
Holyoke. So you rent this theater, $65.
Yeah, rented it out. Got a couple very funny local comedians, and I remember planning for it and leading up to it, just night after night, being like, "Have I made the biggest mistake of my life? Am I going to lose friends? Am I going to bring these comedians out and they're never
Can
going
you
to talk
name
to me again?"
names like who you brought?
Yeah, I went out there with Ed Bell, Austin Black, and Austin Langley.
Yeah, incredibly funny comedians. That's awesome.
Yeah, so I was like, this will be a good lineup, but will there be people to show? And we go
Very
there,
diverse
and
too. Kudos to you.
yeah, and we got 50 people, which doesn't sound like a
Whoa,
lot,
that's
but the
great, dude.
theater, yeah, I mean the theater held maybe a little more than 100, but getting 50 people in a town of 2,500, they came out, they're there to laugh. It was a great show, and that kind of was the start of me understanding, oh, you can create your own path.
So how
Like,
did you get 50? Like, did you drive out there and hang up posters? Like, what was your marketing from top to bottom?
so Facebook ads in these small towns especially I mean, work wonders. In
Okay.
Denver, I mean, the last show I tried to produce, I think I spent $300, sold 8 tickets, had to cancel the show. I mean, it was a bust. I'm pretty sure there I spent, I don't know, 100 on ads, got people. I also spent like $50 for like a newspaper ad. That's how cheap it is out there for whatever their local newspaper is. But I did a couple things like that, and then also reached out, I think, to a bunch of like the school system and a bunch of businesses to be like, hey, there's a show going on. Just anything I could do to touch base with people and be like, will you spread this message?
Huh. Yeah, how do you, so let's pick a random business. Like, can you name a business? How do you reach out to them? You Facebook message them, you call them, and what are you saying to them?
So the easiest way to do it is just looking up like the school system, and usually their websites will have like email addresses.
Okay. For
So
like the
it's like,
principal or like the high school biology teacher? Like, what do you get? Give me some
yeah, I
specifics there.
mean, in the past, I have emailed individual people, but it's that if you can find like a gatekeeper, like somebody who works in the main office who you can say, hey, this could be a fun night out for your teachers. We're
Okay.
doing a clean show as well. So it's like, hey, no fear of it being anything inappropriate. And if you don't mind sending this out to like your colleagues, that would be awesome. And try
Okay.
to find those people that do that. Same with like universities and schools in the area,
Okay.
where it's like, yeah, I guess whether it's college or high
And do you have
school.
any way of knowing if that works? Like, let's say you hit up the high school, the university, and Bob's plumbing business. Like, how do you know which one is actually bringing people?
Yeah, I'm sure I could do better at like specifically giving codes,
Mhm.
which we have done in the past, where it's like half off, and then if you get half off, it came from at least the people that you're spamming. But individually, it's tough to tell,
Okay.
or I haven't done my due diligence to understand specifically. But people have come up to us after shows and been like, "Yeah, we heard about your thing through the school or whoever sent it to us." So I have heard that has helped with some tickets. How many? I don't know. It's just like an extra step to try to do everything I can to get people to a show.
Yeah. Now, have you been back to Holyoke?
No, haven't been back. Probably we'll try to go back at some point here
Okay.
soon. And
Is, is there a reason you have or a reason you will go back? Have not or a reason you will?
have not gone back yet, just because I've fortunately been busy,
Okay.
and just haven't had the time to kind of really try to fill gaps.
Hmm.
Uh, but it was a fun show. The people were there to laugh. I think if they made it clear, kind of when I set it up, they're like, "You're gonna want to do clean," which was fine for me. But it was a place they were down to laugh. But I could also tell if you're not doing clean comedy, they might walk out.
Got it.
It's one of those one of
Yeah,
those
I think I
towns.
was two towns over in the opposite when I was in Akron, Colorado.
Yeah.
I was
Oh
I was
gosh.
I was not even in a VFW. I was in the basement of a VFW. It was
Oh gosh.
pretty hilarious. Pretty. There's some stories I'll tell you off air later, but
Okay.
it was fun overall. It was a good show. That's incredible, man. Way to get after it and like make opportunities for yourself. That's really
Thank
cool.
you.
So do you have any idea if on that show you made or lost money
So
or broke even?
yeah, I think made a little bit. I'm trying to think. I think the tickets were about $10 each. Ended up selling, like I said, around 50.
Okay.
And then with advertising cost and gas and everything like that, it wasn't a huge W.
Yeah.
Maybe $100 or $200
Yeah.
profit.
You got
And
stage time. That was the big thing. And you got to
yeah,
get some comics, some opportunities, which is also good. Social capital, they call that in the biz.
yeah. So that was one that I went into understanding, and I still do this with new venues and stuff, or certain new venues. If I see an opportunity in the future with the show or with the venue, whether it's something I'm setting up or just like I mentioned with the comedy festivals, sometimes it's like I understand I could or will lose money, and I'm okay with that to then have opportunities in the future that could help to benefit me.
Yeah.
So that
Speaking
was
of, you
definitely one.
should, I don't know if you have, but you should apply to Vail Comedy Festival. It's
Will do.
checks
Will do.
all those
Yeah.
boxes. Very good shows. They're almost all sold out. Very fun. They promise, I should say they, make it in a third person. They promise at least 2 spots, but almost every comic gets 3 spots. And don't take my word for it. Just ask somebody who's done it, and I think they'll tell you that it's very good for networking, very good for show quality. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. No, I've heard.
ValeComedyFestival.com for everybody listening. Submissions are
Heard
open
great
until
things.
Valentine's Day. For some reason, we got like 5 submissions yesterday. I don't know
Oh,
why.
interesting.
Like we didn't have any for a couple of days. And maybe on Sundays, people are like, "Oh, I got to find work." I
That
don't know why that
that
happens.
is my day of the week to
Is
send
it?
emails out.
Mine's
Yeah.
Monday, Tuesday. I'm usually like figuring that stuff out. Yeah, we got a joke from North Carolina. Nice. Okay, let's talk about. So you mentioned Denver being hard, or I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but for me, Denver is. I do not like running shows in Denver, Colorado. It's very difficult. There's a lot of competition. Have you figured out any secrets to making a show good in Denver?
Not really. I mean, I've run a couple in Denver, and you're right. It's very difficult. It's night and day. I feel like I've been fortunate enough to get some experience and um, knowledge on setting up successful shows outside of Denver
Yeah,
and in smaller areas. Also in bit like, I've done bigger cities where like Tulsa, Toledo, Wichita, places where it's still a city, but it's not a major city that has a ton of stuff going on. And Denver's just been really tough. I think the things that would make a show successful at this point in my career, uh, I don't want to put the effort in to make that. Fortunately, because I'm busy enough with other things going on in comedy. So, but with that said, a free show, depending on where you are, helps to get people. Doesn't mean people are going to come, but that a lot of shows are free. So, based off that, sometimes, like I was running Odell
yeah,
uh, until like a month or two ago, and we tried to do tickets, but we ultimately made it free because there's multiple other shows like the same night or in that
yeah,
same area that were free, and so it's just a tough model to compete when you have cheaper or free shows around you. But then advertising on social media, also getting the venue to help is a huge part. Like the first
yeah.
successful show I had was in Thornton,
Okay.
and the venue was totally on board. I would take them posters, I would take them table tents with QR codes. They would put it by their register. They would promote it as people were buying and coming in and out. And that helps. I mean, I wouldn't even bother with the venue at this point if they're not on board
Yeah.
like that. If they're kind of wishy-washy, no thank you, like no hard feelings. It's just we all need
Yeah,
to.
that seems to be a pretty common theme, and it relates to pretty much everything in life. In the beginning, when you're kind of desperate for the stage time and to have a show, you'll pick any venue. But once you get some
100%.
experience and some confidence, and you're a good showrunner, you get choosier about the people you want to work with. And I feel exactly the same way. I'll have conversation with venues, and I'll just say, you know what, this isn't really for me. There might be another
Yeah.
comic that wants to work with you, but I got enough other
Good
stuff.
luck with them. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so, what would you say has been your most successful single show you've run?
Most successful single show that I've run probably was Mother Tucker Thornton. That was the first show that first like monthly show that I started, and it was pretty much sold out every time. I did tickets there. They had a separate room, which was huge in the brewery. I'd bring a stage. I cut the lights out, had a spotlight. I mean, the whole thing to make it as professional as I could. And the crowds there were super down to laugh. They were always a good time. Almost never any issues. So that was probably by far the best consistent show that I've run.
That's all. What was the best of those shows, would you say?
Oh man, the best. I'm trying to think because I stopped doing it last summer.
Was there a particular reason you stopped running your favorite show? Did they go out of
Yeah,
business or something?
no, so there's someone else who runs it now, and no hard feelings with them, but it was the first show that the first venue that took a chance on me. And
Hmm.
with that said, I was selling tickets and I was keeping tickets, but I wasn't getting anything from the brewery.
Okay.
So I did it for like 14 months. Like I said, sold it out pretty much, bringing in like 50, 60 people every month for that show that otherwise probably wouldn't have been there.
Yeah.
And so I tried to negotiate some
Mm.
sort of budget, and they didn't seem to want to negotiate, which look, to each their
Yeah.
own, every business, it's their
Sure.
business.
Yeah.
But again, it was one of those things where it's like, I understand that I'm bringing some value now.
Yeah.
So I'm going to try to take that somewhere else. I'm putting a lot of effort in. I was driving there every month to hand off posters and flyers. And I mean, I was selling a lot of tickets, but I was also putting a lot of money into where I would like break even
Yeah.
and sometimes lose money. And I was like, look,
Hmm.
I'm just trying to make this more sustainable. But so yeah, that ended because they didn't want to work on the budget. But
Yeah.
what can you do?
What kind of like at that show? What level headliners were you having? Like
So
who?
I was just at the point where I was starting to feel confident about asking some bigger headliners, but off memory, some headliners. I think I had like Ed Bell, Sammy Anser, Christy Buckley, Nick
Okay.
Dean,
Yeah. So
Johnny
like
Breath.
for people in the Denver area, those are like Comedy Works, A level comics, not Comedy Works headliners, and not like touring comics. Um, have you done any of
Yes.
that where you bring in an out of state comedian to a show?
I haven't. That show was probably the best chance. If I was still running that, I probably would. But after that show, I ran a handful of shows that were decent, but the room itself, I'm sure you probably have had some of that, whether you've run or been a part, where it's like everything seems to be right. It's a small room, it's filled out, but for whatever reason, half the time the crowd seems to be asleep or
Uh,
just not into it,
yeah.
um, which makes it tough to like really try to bring someone in and pay big money when you're like, is it going to be
Yeah, and you don't. There's
good?
also some reputational, uh, consideration there. Like you don't want somebody you look up to come in and think you're not a good showrunner or you're not
Yeah,
like good at comedy in some way.
yeah,
I know exactly what you're talking about. You want a very good show to offer. It's not just about money, like you want the show to be fun for everybody involved, especially if you're going to invite somebody to fly in. Yeah, it's very stressful dealing with
yeah.
that.
A lot of anxiety surrounding producing shows.
Yeah. Um, any funny disasters running a show that you can share? What's your
Oh,
timeline like? Can you stay on for a little bit, or do you have a
yeah,
hard stop? Okay, cool.
yeah, I'm good. Um, Disasters, trying to think. I don't, fortunately, knock on wood, I haven't had too many disasters as far as like equipment failing or I remember, I mean, just a rocky show early on. I was running, it was maybe the second or third show I produced and hosted. And I was newer to comedy. I was brand new to hosting. And and a table in the front came in and they bought tickets, but they were all very drunk and they were heckling from the get-go. And I tried to address it awkwardly. They didn't like that. The next comic came on. They didn't listen. They were back and forth the whole time. And I just remember feeling, I just didn't have the skill set to deal with that at that time, which now, now I don't even like addressing it on stage. I'll just go up to them after and go, hey, you guys need to keep it down. And if they have a problem, it's like, I'll give you your money back. Get out of here. I don't want to,
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't want to deal with it.
I had a recent show where I guess you'd call it a heckler, but it's not necessarily heckling. Like heckling means like being mean towards the comic, but just an interrupter to the show. And generally I'll leave it up to the comics to like, I gave the comics a code word. I just said, hey, there's a very drunk person near the front. Here's the code word. If you say that, I will kick them out for you. And they're like, great, don't worry about it. Probably going to let them stay. And they never used the code word. And I finally kicked the person out because the crowd was like upset. Like they were ruining the show. And I finally kicked them out. And we talked about it later. And both the comics were like, we should have pulled the ripcord way sooner. We didn't think it, we were trying to be cool and nice and fun, but it was not, it was what, once they were gone, the show was like 10 times better. We should have done that. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's my biggest fear. I'm not a confrontational person.
Right.
The last thing I want to do is to go kick somebody out.
Right.
But also when you have 50 plus other people who've bought tickets and the thought of them asking for their money back or them leaving a negative review or them complaining, it's like, okay, let me deal with one person so I don't have to potentially deal with 50. That's much easier.
I had that just on Saturday night. I had that problem. I had to get somebody kicked. I was the headliner and I had to get somebody kicked out. And I've learned this from other headliners who are better than me. But the basic strategy is you start out really cool on stage, like, hey, you're a lot of fun, whatever. And then you kind of over time, like once you've addressed them 3 or 4 times, you start asking, you basically Jedi mind trick the crowd into turning against them. And once you make it seem like it's the crowd's idea to kick him out, then you still look like a good guy on stage and you've improved the show. So that seems to work.
Digging into them right away is usually not the way to go. You got to build some trust with the audience, and then because
if you go too hard at him, you look like a jerk, and then the whole show is, and then you're probably going to lose everybody because the audience doesn't like you anymore. All right. Let's see. What else can I ask you about? Well, what are you looking forward to doing? Are you going to spin up some more shows, or are you going to focus on your own touring? And I also want to talk about your out-of-state show running.
Yeah. So kind of the loose plan moving forward. Fortunately, over the last couple of months, I've been very fortunate to get my schedule filled out fairly well in Denver. So it's the first time since starting comedy where I've been able to not focus too much on what's the next road trip, and go, oh my gosh, my calendar in the city is pretty busy. So I can work on networking with some of the higher up comics that, maybe I haven't met or spoken much with, and get to be on the same show as them and, showcase my jokes in the city that I live in.
Yeah. How do you do that, by the way? Because I can't, I haven't figured that out. How did you get there? And what does that mean filled out? Are you doing like 10 shows a month, 30 shows a month? Like what?
I've been fairly consistently in between 10 to 15 shows a month, I would say. Nice. And a lot of it honestly is via hosting some of these shows. So I've been pulled on as a reoccurring host for some of the more consistent shows in the city.
Okay.
Which is great. I mean, it can be kind of tough to showcase
your
best stuff from the host spot, but I appreciate the opportunity, and I look forward to, I can always get better at hosting. We can always get better at hosting and comedy in general. So it's nice to be in the city and be able to do that. But I definitely want to still, moving forward next year, would like to try to set up maybe one road trip a month or one every 2 months to try to start getting in and setting up shows where I'm actually headlining and kind of start learning that skill set.
Yeah. What does that look like? Like have you Have you done a road show where you're headlining yet?
I I mean, yes and no. I've done some like
Like
loose
co-headlining?
headlining where
Okay.
it's like 25-ish minutes on like a showcase that I didn't set up, but
Okay.
out of town.
Okay.
But I don't know that I would consider that I have gone out and, or I know that I can say I haven't gone out and closed a show with like 45 plus.
Right.
So
So you're talking about like renting a theater, finding a venue or brewery, something like that, and the marketing is like This is the Ben Dailey show. You're paying it to see Ben Dailey and the undercard.
right, right,
Okay.
yeah. And I'll probably just hit up a bunch of the venues that I've worked with over the last couple of years that shows were successful, sold well, and so hopefully I have some knowledge there with the market and being able to sell there. Who knows, 2 years later if
Yeah, I
that's
mean, honestly, like in those markets, do they know the difference between Ed Bell and Ben Dailey? No, they don't. I mean, maybe in Denver, like a comedy nerd might know the difference, or you and Sammy Anzer, like in the middle of Nebraska, nobody knows who Sammy is, nobody knows who you are, So
exactly. And that's what's encouraging, going through these
yeah,
places and being absolute nobodies, whether it's me, Ed, somebody else. It's like, yeah, they don't know us. They just see our ad. And, a lot of the stuff we've done has been marketed as clean, but I've also done runs that aren't marketed as clean and have also sold well.
yeah.
So it's not necessarily just, hey, they're only coming because it's clean. Um, yeah, there's ways to market and get people in for
Can,
sure.
can you talk a little bit about what you do when you set up a Facebook ad?
Yeah, yeah. So when I'm going to a different city, I'm obviously making like an Eventbrite page with the where they buy the tickets. I'm putting whatever graphic there. I'm not the best graphic artist using Canva or whatever, but I try to just make it simple for people because I usually use that same graphic for the Facebook ad as well.
Okay.
And so I'll replicate that Eventbrite page onto a Facebook event, and then yeah, from there I usually just boost the event via Facebook, and then I'll there's a bunch of settings that you can change as far as the age and the distance and the rate, all
What
that
do you
stuff.
like to do? What are some of your go-to settings?
That's a tough thing because I'm not sure if these settings are
What have you
ideal.
tried?
But what I usually do is I usually do like 22 to 64,
Okay.
depending on where I'm at. If I'm in the middle of Denver, I'm not going to 64. I'll
Okay.
keep it tighter in age range. But if I'm in the middle of nowhere or in like a Midwest city, I usually go like 22 to 64. The radius, again, it depends, but a lot of times I'll go 15, 20 miles. People are a lot more willing to drive a decent distance when you're in a smaller area versus, if you're in Denver going 20 miles and getting way up into Thornton or whatever, you're wasting your money there, um, in my
Yeah.
opinion. Uh, and then what other things are in there? I guess you can put in like demographics and likes and things like that. Honestly, I've tried putting in like comedy, beer,
Yeah.
date night, stuff like that. I don't know if that's worked putting those in or not having that. I honestly feel like I should probably take some sort of social media course to
Right.
get the up to date information on that.
When you're doing a show like 1,000 miles away, are you hanging posters? And how does that work?
I in the past usually will make a poster and email it to the venue and be like, please put it up. This goes back to what I talked about earlier, where it's like you want to work with a venue who wants to work with you and have a comedy show.
Yeah.
Now, when it's a show on the road and they're 1,000 miles away, it's kind of tough to,
Yeah.
you send an email and they go, okay, we'll do it. And then you're like, we'll see if they do it. It's tough
Yeah.
to enforce that when you're kind of doing a one and done. But yeah, I definitely send the posters and try to send all the information. I'll add them as like a co-host on the Facebook event, so they
Okay.
have access to it, so they can share it on their page. So yeah, try to do everything you can to basically have everybody on board, have all the tools necessary to market it easily.
Right. Now I know you're kind of an equipment nerd. You're into good quality show running equipment. Can you give a little rundown on what's in your comedy garage?
Yeah, so my equipment that I have, I've got a Bose, I think it's the L1 uh,
Compact, the
compact.
tower.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, the
I have
tower.
that
It's
as
like a
well.
line array. Yeah, I
Yeah,
love it. It's just one of those, the base and then the tower goes straight up. It projects like 180 degrees, so you just need the one speaker, not the two.
hmm,
I ended up getting that just for an easier to carry around setup,
yep.
but it's also just a very high quality thing. And as I was looking into stuff, I was like, you know what? This is what I'm trying to do
It's
for
expensive.
like,
You
it
got to sell a
is.
lot of $10 tickets to pay that thing off.
Yeah, it
But
was expensive.
but
And
it
for new,
hopefully will last forever.
yeah, I've had mine since, I mean, I guess for like 4 years now.
Yeah,
But yeah, I imagine it'll last unless I drop it, out of the
yeah.
car or something. But that's been good. I've got a small Bose as well. I think it's a S1 Pro, which is a very small, compact, but powerful enough for most rooms that you're looking at like 50 to 75 people. It's
Yeah.
also, um, what is the word? Not
Wireless.
wireless. I
Yeah.
guess it's wireless. Yeah, you can
Yeah.
do it. You
It
don't
doesn't
have
have to
to,
be plugged in. It's battery powered.
right, which can be for like a more simple show setup. Honestly, lugging stuff around, especially driving around the country with stuff, it's having an option that's like that is goes a long way.
So you bring one of those and an XLR cable and a mic.
Yeah, yeah, I've got a couple XLR cables, SM58s, and I've got some lights as well that I'll set up for spotlights. I haven't used the. I mean, it depends on the setting. If it's like it's nice to have the lights off and have a spotlight
Yeah.
on, but sometimes there's just rooms that they don't want to turn the lights off. They can't turn all the lights off, whatever the reason is. Sometimes I don't use those.
Yeah. You mentioned a stage earlier. Do you still have that stage? Do you
I still have it, haven't used it in quite a while. I went to Home Depot and bought a bunch of wood and made
you
two,
built it?
yeah, built
Okay.
two sections of, they're like 2 foot by 4 foot, and then you can connect them to make a 4 by 4. And it was nice, but also again, when you lug
Oh,
100-pound
brutal.
stage around plus all the other equipment enough
Yeah.
times, you're like, maybe I don't need the stage at every
Yeah,
place.
especially like in your example of going to Northeast Colorado, you had three other comics in the car. Like sometimes there just isn't space.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it's just like
Do you have
we meet.
chairs?
I don't have any chairs. I thought about getting some.
If you ever need chairs, Uncle Mark's got your back. I,
Oh,
I had a
nice.
I had a venue problem and had to go out. It's a quick funny story. This is in Vail, Colorado. I needed 50 chairs, and I called a rental company, and it was $800 to rent 50 chairs for 48 hours. And I was like, I only need them for like 3 hours. They're like, doesn't matter. It's $800. And by the way, this is off-season pricing. Wait till wedding season. And I was like, screw you.
That is crazy.
I called up somebody who was affiliated with Don't Tell Comedy, and I was like, "Hey, what kind of chairs do you guys use?" They're like, "Oh, we get these ones from IKEA and get the white ones instead of the black ones because they're easier to clean," which didn't make any sense to me, and it still doesn't really make sense to me that white would be easier to clean than black. But I went
Yeah,
out and bought every single white folding chair from IKEA. They're about $12 a piece. So 50 chairs. I had to buy. It took me like 2 months to get 50 chairs, but $600, and I'm now my own chair rental company. And the other
nice.
thing I had to buy was I think it was like $150, maybe even 200. Like I have a really beefy cart, like a thing to carry, like to move
Yeah,
the chairs, and that thing's been a lifesaver.
nice. Yeah, I
So
bought I bought a big tote that has wheels on it that I put all my equipment in, and then I just roll
nice.
that
Yeah.
because doing 5 different trips, I was like, yeah, it's much
Yeah,
easier
yeah.
just to
I have
put
a
it all in one.
cart for that kind of stuff, like like the kind of like a softball mom would have, like a
Yeah,
like
yeah.
a I don't know what you call it, a hand cart, I guess is what you
Hmm.
call it. Those are like $80, I think, maybe $100. Um,
Well,
yeah.
with
So if
50
you ever need
chairs, I bet
chairs,
that's
let me
I bet
know.
that's useful.
And here's the crazy thing about the chairs. They say like if somebody closes a door, somebody else opens a window or whatever, and There's a joke about Eric Clapton throwing a baby out. I'm no longer at that venue anymore, but I still have all the chairs. And since I had the chairs, I got 2 new venues that would not have been viable without chairs. And I only need like 10 or 20 chairs at these ones. But
Hmm.
now I have them, and those are great shows. They're really fun. And I'm glad I have the chairs because I mean, I was really annoyed about having to buy the chairs and transport the chairs. But now I'm kind of glad I have them.
Nice, nice.
Wouldn't really work for out of state work, but
Yeah, it'd be tough to load that much
yeah,
in a
we did.
car.
We had a question online from North Carolina, going back a while. Like, just in general, can you talk about merch? Do you have merch? What's your attitude towards merch?
Yeah, so that's another thing moving forward this next year. Trying to get into some more headlining stuff where I need to be better at getting some merch. I have done merch in the past, and it's mostly been with these group tours that I've done with like Ed and Austin. And we had like a little silly name for the tour, and part of that was like regular folks. So we just made koozies that said regular folks, nothing special,
Yeah.
but and people, honestly, what I realized, and I'm curious to hear your input on this and your experience, but what I realized is people don't care about the merch. Not many people want the koozies, but it provides a medium, something that you can say, hey, come see me after the show. I'm selling merch for donation based. That's what we've done, whatever, whether it's donation or it just gives them an excuse to come back, to say hello, to give you some money. And honestly, probably more than 50% of the people will give money and then go, oh, no, thanks. I don't want the koozie, but thank you for the show. And then it's like, no, I need to get rid of these koozies. Please take 2.
That's hilarious. Yeah, I totally agree. I feel like it's almost like facilitated begging. It's like instead of people would feel awkward giving you cash directly. But if they're giving you cash in a transaction for something, and even if they're going around the corner and throwing it away, it's still a value. But I will say this: I've done a lot of shows on the road, worked with a lot of headliners, been a headliner a bunch, and what I have noticed is if you have good merch, it's rare for people to have good merch. And what I mean by good merch is like when you show the merch 50 minutes into your set and you get an applause break for the merch, that's good merch. And you will sell more when there is good merch, because there are the people who enjoy your show and they have disposable income and want to support you, especially in small towns. Like I go to like oil fields in North Dakota and stuff like that, and people will just give you, like, I've done bad shows going years back where people just showered me with money anyways because they were just grateful that I came out. And looking back, I wasn't very good. I didn't really deserve that money, but they were just trying to, I don't know, somehow spread the word. Come to our town if you're funny and we'll pay you, above and beyond what the venue is paying you. But when
Right,
you have that segment of the audience. Then you have some people who are never going to buy anything. They're upset they came to the comedy show in the first place. They don't have any
yeah,
money. They got free tickets. They're never going to buy anything. And then you have the maybes. And the maybes, if the merch is great and it really connects with them, they will open their wallets. And that's when you really like hit the jackpot, because you get all the people who are tipping and you get those maybes converted. Then you can make a lot of money on merch.
what is the merch that you've seen that's gotten a standing ovation?
I've never gotten a standing ovation, but I have a piece of merch which I can't share publicly here. I can tell you later.
Okay.
But every time I show it, I would say 9 out of 10 times I get an applause break for it.
Oh,
And
wow.
it's a little bit like a magic trick,
Right.
because it's a callback basically. Like I've learned over time, it's a punchline to a joke. And when I do the punchline, let's say 35 minutes into the act, I really like ham it up at this point. Like I do some crowd work around it. Like I make sure people have it in their head. It's not just like
Right.
I do the punchline and move on. I've learned, punchline, tag it, crowd work it. And then so people like have it in their head. And then 15, 20 minutes later, when I introduce, and I always do it last. I'm like, I've learned which one is the best. And so I'm like merch, merch, merch. And then if you can believe it, I have merch. and people go nuts. They lose their minds because they remember it was like the weirdest thing they'd ever heard. They can't believe that somebody would have made something around that. People come up to the table afterwards. I need to see this merch. Show me that merch. So
interesting.
Let me try and think of something that I saw that was really good. Here's an example. I did a casino in the Pacific Northwest, and I was hosting, and there was a feature and a headliner, and the feature was really good. And he had merch, and he had a poster. He was doing a 50-state tour this year, 2023, and he had printed 100 posters, and it had like a picture of the United States and his face, and he was very funny, and it was basically like, look, here's my poster. It's, hopefully I get famous one day and you'll have it on your wall and you'll be excited, or I won't, and I'll shoot up a post office and I'll make the news anyway, so you'll have a collector's item. And he said, I'll sign it for you, and they're individually numbered, so they're collector's items. And I thought that was pretty cool. And the way he did it, like I borrowed this from him. He had those markers that are like, they have paint in them.
Mm-hmm.
Like you shake them.
Right.
So like just the way he like signed it was like, it was high quality,
Right.
And he was selling them for like $25, I think. And they probably cost him like $1.
Yeah. So there's a couple of those and you're making.
Yeah. And trust me, he was crushing it. The headliner had some koozies. He wasn't selling anything. I was selling merch that night. I had like okay merch sales. The feature was killing it with that. And then sometimes the comedy album like cards, the download cards can be pretty good, especially if people like you. Like I've seen this a lot. Like somebody's very funny on stage, and they're like, "Hey, if you like this, here's a comedy album I recorded 2 years ago. I didn't do any of the jokes that are on this album tonight. So if you want to hear another hour of me, come by, whatever you want to give me, And usually they'll have some joke about like, if you're going to give me $1, you can also spit in my eye. Like, so they're basically hinting, give me 5, 10, 20
give
bucks.
Me more than $1. Yeah.
Yeah. So those have been good. And like I said, the punchline things, I mean, more to your point about it being basically a tip, it's really the comedians who just absolutely destroy. People want their merch.
For sure.
There is merch that's very, very good. I will say I'm very anti t-shirt. I think t-shirts are so dumb. T-shirts are so dumb just because they're heavy, and there are too many reasons for people to say no. It's like the wrong size, it's the wrong color. And the last thing I'll say on this is take credit cards. There's a lot of drinking at comedy. There are people who want to give you money. I have gotten a lot of money from tap to pay since I started accepting credit cards. And I have lost a lot of money prior to that, where people are trying to Venmo me and they like can't even type into their phone. And then I like try and help another customer, and then they just like wander off. So making it easy is
100%.
And the merch is important. Like you're not going to make, like if you go run your own show, in my experience, maybe you make a couple $100 if you're really successful with the marketing and getting the rental costs low and et cetera. But, you're going to spend that couple $100 on the undercard and gas to get there. And then it's all up to the merch. I've done shows where I'm break even the minute I go on stage, and I need to sell merch to make any money.
Right.
That's the only way to make money. All right. Well, I gotta wrap up here. Ben, this is incredible. This may be a record for our longest episode. Really interesting. How can people find you? And maybe give us a goal for 2024, something you're excited about.
Yeah. Can find me on Instagram at Ben Dailey Comedy, BenDailey Comedy. Also have a podcast called The Weekly Daily Podcast. Feel free to listen to it. You guys can be the fourth and fifth listeners. Nice. And something I'm excited for next year.
Give us a pitch.
So it is just about my journey as a comedian. It's me kind of by myself.
Is it just you? Is it a solo? Okay. Solo. How long are the episodes?
About 45 minutes.
You do that once a week?
Once a week.
45 minutes talking into the void. I love it.
Yeah.
They're going to be valuable when you're big and famous doing Pepsi Center. People are going to want to listen to those early episodes.
Yeah, go back to when I'm talking about all the mics I was bombing at. But yeah,
How
something I'm
long
excited.
have you been doing that?
I've been doing it coming up on a year.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, maybe a month or two away from a year.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, a lot of talking by myself, which is
Okay.
I guess that's what we do, but it's
Yeah.
usually two other people. So that wouldn't be by yourself. It didn't make sense. Anyways, I am excited next year for just the opportunity to headline more. I've learned a lot. I feel like I've learned how to form a joke, how to do a joke about things that I care about and that are relevant to me, connecting with crowds, getting that hot 10, 15, 20, but doing 45 plus obviously is, as you know, it's a different thing. The ebbs and flows of keeping people's attention, having to do a merge pitch, having to keep the crowd's attention when you're at the end of the show. Maybe they're tired, maybe people are more drunk. So looking forward to learning and getting more experience with that, with headlining, and trying to figure out that skill set to move forward and try to be able to learn it and then apply it and really do well with it.
That's awesome, Ben. Awesome. Well, Ben Dailey Comedy, check him out. Less than 5 years in and running shows around the country, renting theaters, just a real hustler and go-getter. Check him out. We're gonna wrap this up. Stick around for a second, Ben. All right. Goodbye, everybody. Tune in next week, next Monday.